Hello world, my name is Sima, and as I promised earlier, today I will tell you about the coup which happened in my cell. The senior of the cell had made an arrangement with the administration of the institution, and at lunchtime a phone was passed through the feeding hall. Naturally, this didn't go unnoticed, and a conflict began to brew from this moment on. And this happened just before New Year, and less than a week later, on December 30th, a phone, along with the moonshine prepared for holidays, flew off on the Schmon, on which I were on duty. All this you can watch on my early videos. So, after all of this, a general meeting between prisoners was held with the question addressed to the senior of the cell. Why didn't she let us use the phone when it was in the cell? And she replied that everyone could have access to the phone in the cell while it were there, and she thought that on New Year everyone could call to their friends, parents, family. And then a schedule could have been made for each person to use it. Wherever this is true remains only a matter of speculation, but she said so, and we can't know what would be because we're already sitting without phone and alcohol. So, one woman, old woman, her name Vladlen, we were calling her Vladlen because of her surname. She was always turning up intrigue, and she suggested herself for to be appointed as the senior. And those who knew that she's a rotten person voted against her. But on that time, there were a lot of people from quarantine who didn't realize for whom they were voting for, because she looked like a granny, and cute granny, while you don't know a lot of bad things about her, I will tell you a lot of stories what actress she is and what she have done. They didn't know, so they voted for her, and the amount of voices were more for her than for a young senior of the cell who were in that time before Vladlen. So my understanding of this person had formed a little earlier. I treated all elderly people without exception with a great care until I came to prison. For real, I understood that the person could be so rotten, and it doesn't matter the ages, they looks like cute grannies, but in fact, she made a real bloody stuff. I will tell you a lot about these grannies. There are a lot of them. And if you're a normal person, don't matter what ages you are. And if you're a rotten person, even in 70 years, you would be such. So, everything with Vladlen started well between us. At first, we exchanged books and shared thoughts about what we had read, so to speak, communicated. I stopped communicating with her as soon as gossip about other convicts and any discussion of them began to appear in our conversations. And after I stopped speaking with her, the old lady turned against me, and then came the turning point. Vladlen fed pigeons, which seems like a good deal and some kind of animals besides cockroaches. But if the birds didn't rupture their esophagus and stomach from overeating prison bread. During the morning check, the chief operative arrived, and while we stood in the corridor, she called Vladlen into the cell, and in raised tones started to shout at her for feeding the pigeons. Vladlen said something in response, and the operative called me into the cell. So she Vladlen went out, and I came, and we were just two of us in the cell with this operative. And the old lady said that she wasn't guilty of anything, that Simo was the one who feeds the pigeons. What? And why operative didn't ask anyone else who feeds the pigeon? Why she believed to Vladlen, and everyone knew that only Vladlen feeds pigeons, and she just believed her words and asked me to come to the cell. And the most amazing thing, so to speak, was my first impression of the administration. They use prison slangs words more often than the convicts. And upon my negative answer to the operative about feeding the pigeons, she said, why are you trying to pull the fluff on me? What I'm trying to do? What are you talking about? I translated into English every word like it were in Russian. And when I heard this phrase from her in Russian, I didn't understand what she said to me. I understood every word of she said. I understood every word, but in the phrase she said that fluff, pull fluff on me. What does it mean? Even in Russian, I didn't understand, and I found out a little later that it means to think too much of yourself. Okay, if it means so, why you saying me this in this situation? So strange administration, and really closing their brains, like not open-minded. So this situation marked the beginning of an unofficial war with Grandma Vladlen between us. So that's why, as soon as she came to power as a head of the cell, I immediately went to sleep on the breaks. So if you remember, on breaks, sleep, it's like in a hierarchy, it's really uncomfortable to sleep on breaks, and uncomfortable because light always lighting on your eyes, and in this hierarchy it means that you mean nothing, but it doesn't matter. And it was funny that the first thing she made when she came to power, she said that I have to sleep on breaks. Okay, so everything returned to normal, but in conclusion, Vladlen couldn't resolve any internal issue without having hysterics. I think she purposely escalated conflicts to the breaking point because she enjoyed when people were arguing and fights. She just enjoyed this energetic, I think so. And from my observation, the most theatrically pious people who prayed with their four hands on the ground turned out to be shamers and gossips, as Vladlen were. She was like so pious, but in fact, I'll tell you a lot of stories about her because she made my day. But on that time, I was angry about all this situation. Uh, but now I remind this with laughing and smile on it. And what happened from 31st of December 2015 to January 10, 2016, no one works during the holidays. And this is the most dead time in prison. Dead time because nothing happened. You can't go to the gym, and you don't have posts. And even in the detention center, we spent these days without communication, hot water in the cold cell, and in constantly noisy chicken coop, because the new senior didn't do anything, did nothing, apparently enjoying these disputes and fueling the fire by herself in this argues, yeah, and these fights. and everything returned to normal once everyone returned to work on January 11th. And the administration of this institution learned about the uprising in our cell and reappointed the person they wanted. They dethroned the senior from they brought the ill-fated home. Like, for what they will change her? She works for them, and for sure they don't want to see Vladlen, who can't even solve problems in cell, not even with administration. So nothing changed, but these 11 days of stress showed how important the position of senior in the cell is, their adequacy and their reaction to what is happening, and even that we knew that our this young senior work with administration, but she could make clean in the cell. I mean, it wasn't fighting, wasn't arguing. Uh, she could held it, and everything was normal, and that's why she was a great senior of the cell. So on next video, I'll tell you lots of funny things, how we make jokes on Vladlen. Stay in touch. Hope to see you soon. Bye.